I think we can start now. If anybody joins, I can just let them in as they join. All right. So this week we're going to be talking about the Roman Empire. So for the last 3 weeks, we've been talking about a lot of different of the earlier civilizations: Mesopotamia, the Persian Empire, the Greeks. And this week we're going to talk about the Roman Empire. So we're moving back from the ancient Chinese empires, the civilization, and back to kind of the West side and talking about the Romans, because that's kind of a very famous empire that probably everybody will learn at school at some point. All right. So before I begin giving you guys more information and more interesting facts, let's see. What do you guys know about the Romans? Anything that you know? And maybe somebody will know who that picture, who is in that picture. If you have an answer, you can just raise your hand up and I'll call on you. Any interesting facts about the Romans? Any?
Romans usually wear very much clothes to keep them not so warm because it's so hot over there.
Ah, good. So yeah, so you're talking about their clothing. So we know about their clothing. They like to wear really light clothes because, as Lydia said, it is pretty hot there, right? It's kind of around the equator, so it's pretty hot in Rome. So that's why they loved wearing a lot of drapey clothes that are like drapes, and because of the heat and temperature in Rome. All right. Does anybody else have any answers to the question? Anything else you know about Rome? Where is Rome? What is the Romans famous for? Any famous people? Jasper.
The Romans are famous for because they won great battles.
Great point. Great battles. So yeah, from the title, it's called the Roman Empire. So we know that they have won a lot of great battles, that they have conquered a lot of land. That's why people call it an empire. So yeah, that's something we're going to talk about more later on, about how Rome won a lot of these great battles and how that kind of affect Rome as a whole. All right. Let's get one more from Lyndon and we can move on.
I don't have some. I have a question.
Sure.
So how many land do you have to conquer to become an empire? I mean,
yeah, great question. So to be honest, there's not really an exact number because empire is a concept that humans created. There's no exact number. There's no say I conquer 5, 6 pieces of land and then now I'm an empire. Not really like that. It's more of their influence, how much influence this piece of land or this country has around the world. If they have a really large or significant effect on the world's economy, the world's politics, then they'll be called an empire. Something because an empire is a country that is really influential, so it can impact the world a lot. All right, perfect. So I see most people don't have that much information about Romans. Everybody might already know what Roman is. Oh, I've heard of it. Rome. It's in Italy. But what? Well, nobody really knows a lot about ancient Rome. So let's get to it for today's class. And for those of you who are curious, the famous person in this picture is a Roman consul, the famous Julius Caesar. And for your information, no, the Caesar salad is not named after Julius Caesar, but there is something else that is named after him, and we'll talk about that later. All right. So we from the title, we know that Rome was a very large empire and a really powerful one too. But how did it become a really powerful empire? From previous classes, we learned about the importance of agriculture and how we should have developed a really strong agriculture. Usually, these really large empires and great civilizations are usually beside a lot of fresh water, warm climate, and also really rich soil. However, the Roman Empire didn't really obey that law. If you see on a map of Rome, there's really small kind of peninsula because Rome is in Italy, which is kind of this peninsula that looks like a boot. So Rome isn't really near a lot of fresh water. It doesn't have a lot of land for agriculture, and it's just surrounded with a lot of oceans, which means that that water can't be used for drinking or growing crops. So how did they become a really important empire? Well, that's because Rome isn't really necessarily a a really great empire as we defined it before. So before, all of the empires are within the Mesopotamia and kind of that basin that has a lot of nutrient-rich soil that allowed them to grow a lot of crops and become really strong because they have a lot of natural resources. However, Rome really focused on the development of an army. They had a really powerful army. So with this army, they were able to conquer and successfully, might I add, a lot of these civilizations that focused more on agriculture because they had a really powerful army. So the Roman army was one of the largest and meanest fighting forces in the ancient world. Right? So because they have this really strong army, they were this really fearsome force. Everybody feared Rome, the Roman Empire, because of how powerful they are at fighting. Because unlike other civilization, which focused on other developing factors such as farming, the Roman really focused on the army. And another really important part was that the Romans didn't just conquer the lands, but they knew how to control it and govern land.
I have a question.
Sure, Lyndon?
Uh, why is Rome it's called the Roman Empire when the name of the land is actually called Rome?
Right, good question. So Roman is kind of because Roman is the name for the people of Rome. So Rome is a place. There's a very famous saying that maybe some of you guys know. The saying goes, "When in Rome, do what the Romans do." So that kind of explains like what you're talking about. Why is it called Rome? Well, Rome is kind of the place. It is the country's name. Like for example, Canada, and Romans is the name of the people. So for example, Canadians. So that is kind of the difference why it's called Rome instead of Roman or something else. Great question. All right, let's keep talking about kind of this what makes Rome kind of a special empire because of the more rapid development in the centuries coming. Because this is more modern than the Mesopotamian civilizations and so on. Because the Romans were really at its peak around 100 to around 080. So 100 BC to around 080 was kind of the peak of the Roman Empire, and that continued for a long time. During that time, a lot of technological advancements made it possible for Romans to become really army centered instead of agriculture, because a lot of these new irrigation systems, a lot of these new planting knowledge made it possible that only a small amount of farmers can feed the whole entire population. I was talking about how the Romans didn't just know how to conquer, but they also were really good rulers. This is really because they were really good at avoiding a lot of conflicts and a lot of rebellions because they treated the people they conquered really well. They were really good conquerors. They didn't treat people badly. So the people that they conquered were actually living a pretty good life, even after they got conquered. Usually, Romans uh, allowed the people that got conquered to live as they were, but they also allowed them to have a Roman citizenship, so that if the people wanted to, they could become a part of the Romans. Another part that made the Romans so successful is because of their roads. We talked about the development of agriculture um, a lot for the past few weeks because it is a really essential part of creating this really great empire. And through the development of agriculture, we always link it back to the use of resources. Agriculture creates uh, a surplus of food, which makes it possible for other people to do things instead of just being hunters and gatherers. So that is a really important point there. And because of this development in agriculture and the technology, we talked about how governments collected taxes and from people that farmed or did business and trades, they collected taxes to create better infrastructure. And that is something that the Romans were really good at. The Romans had a lot of good infrastructure. So they had really good infrastructures such as the government, which we'll talk about later on. And the important point I want to focus on here was the roads. The Roman roads are one of the most important aspects of what makes the Roman Empire so great. Well, what is the Roman roads? Well, Roman roads are it's roads that the Romans built for trade and for accessibility of the army. They wanted a lot of people to move to a lot of places really fast because the Rome Empire was really vast. It was really large, right? So they needed a lot of these really good roads to have people travel. And well, how good are these Roman roads?
Teacher, I have a question. What kind of things did they use to make the rope?
Right. So they would use pebbles, gravel, and concrete, anything that is really structurally sound. And usually they were like large pieces of rock that created these really well built roads. And these roads are really interesting because some of these Roman roads built in kind of 100 BC to 0 AD are still existing and are still well preserved today. We still can see some of the really ancient Roman roads if you go to Italy and specifically in Rome.
Teacher,
Mhm.
then if wait, can we make it from today too? Can we make it to today? Like
So,
can we
the,
make it for today? Like can like somebody make it on this day? Like still can we make it?
you mean the Roman roads? Of course, because they technically didn't have a lot of technology, but they just put a lot of time and effort into building these roads, which made it last because they treated it really well. However, roads today, modern roads, will probably last much longer than what the Roman roads would do because we have better technology. We can create roads using better material, such as better concrete, a more balanced mixture of concrete. Because back then, they usually just they didn't have a really good idea on how to create the best material to build a certain building.
Wait, we also use concrete?
Yes, that's what all roads are made out of right now, concrete.
Oh, okay.
All right. Let me get through these points and I'll answer any questions you have
Yes.
at the end.
Jasper has a question.
Yeah, I'll answer those questions at the end.
Oh.
All right. So I was talking about the importance of the road. Well, I was ta- well, these roads that lasted a long time really helped the Roman empires because of trade. We learned how trade is really important because of resources. I have a surplus of resources. I want to trade with you so I can get better things or the things I need. So these really, really well-built roads made it possible for a lot of traders to move through Rome really fast and really efficiently.
Wait a
Also,
minute. But why does the picture looks like this Roman soldier is capturing a thief?
I'm not sure. I just picked the picture because it makes the screen more lively and it gives you like a representation of how they lived back then.
Yes, but it looks like it's catching a thief or it's gonna get money. Like it doesn't get them.
All right, let's keep going.
Fake money. Yeah, give fake money and then you go to jail.
All right, so let's keep going with that train of thought. The Romans were successful because of their roads, which led to a lot of traders running through Rome. Because of these traders, these merchants had a good time uh, moving through because of these roads. And because merchants were able to get to their destination faster, the Romans were able to get their goods faster, which means that they were able to get a lot of resources and a lot of, more importantly, information through from a battlefield much efficient. And this just makes Rome having a better economy than all the other civilizations at that time, which made Rome more superior. Because usually back then, not a lot of people were focusing on roads because not nobody owned cars. There were no cars back then. They had carriages, which are still really really rare. But the Romans focused on a point that is really really important, which is the roads. All right. Any questions?
Why is there this? Is this a boat or something?
Yes, those are boats.
Oh, but why is it circling?
It may be for other things. So it may be for more stationary for fishing and other things.
Nice.
All right. Lyndon, you have a question?
How long were those roads? And how many were they?
Great question. So there were a lot of roads. So mostly uncountable because we don't really know how many roads were there. Maybe some were lost in time. Some roads were, restructured, maybe rebuilt. So we don't know, but there were a lot of roads. And the Roman Empire was an empire that spanned across Europe.
Maybe 100 million thousand roads.
Yeah, maybe. Right. Yeah. So they had a lot of roads and all over the places too, which made it really easy for transportation.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
All right. Oh, I see Angela has a question asking what infrastructure is. So if I didn't touch on it, I'll answer that again. Infrastructure is anything to do with public buildings. So a public infrastructure just means any building or anything that is built. So like a road, a house that can help people. Usually it will benefit the public. So example of infrastructure will be the roads we're talking about. These roads really benefited people to help them travel better. All right. Any other questions before we move on? Yes, Jasper.
There were also sewers.
Yes, that's correct. So that's also why Romans were so advanced. They had a sewer system, which allowed them to get the waste, human waste, so poop, out of the city and to other places where they can dispose of it. All right. Okay, let's move on. So we're talking about what makes the Romans successful. So the next part of this is not only that did they develop an army, but they had a really great political system. Many of you guys aren't interested in politics because you guys are so young, but it is something really interesting to keep in the back of your head. How not everything is good and bad, but there's always nuances. So slight differences between people, which make a really complex political system. So a system of rulers and followers. So the Roman political system was really not like any of the civilizations and empires that came before them. The civilization or empires that are before the Romans usually followed one of the three political systems: a monarchy, an aristocracy, or democracy. However, the Romans didn't really abide to one of these three. The Roman public's political system kind of mixed all of these three together. So the political system wasn't just one distinct system. It contained some form of monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. Oh, and I apologize. There's some misspelling on the aristocracy. All right. So maybe let's just go through some of these systems again. So what is a monarchy? What is an aristocracy? And what is a democracy? Does anybody have any ideas? You can raise your hand if you do. Maybe any one of these. What a monarchy, what an aristocracy, and what a democracy is. We've talked about a democracy when we're talking about the ancient Greeks. So maybe some of you guys might know.
Question, but what does all of them mean?
Yeah, that was my question too.
Sure. So I guess it's a more complicated topic. So I guess I'll just say the answer. So a monarchy is a political system, so a leadership system, kind of, on where there is one king or queen.
It's ruled by only one person.
That's correct. So one person, a king or queen, rules the country. That is a monarchy. An aristocracy is when it's ruled by the rich. So there isn't just one person, but a group of people that kind of rule the country because they're wealthy or they have a lot of power because they're wealthy. So that's kind of the slight difference between monarchy and aristocracy. Most of them is power within a minority. So the minor amount of people hold a lot of power. In the case of monarchy, that's one person. In aristocracy, it's a group of people. And democracy is representation of the people.
I have a question.
Sure.
So if they have a mixed system, how could they be ruled by a king or queen and also ruled by the rich?
That's a really great question. So we're going to explain that, why it's called a really mixed system. So let's start with the really center, the heart, so the middle of the political system, what everything is revolved around. So the heart of the Romans political system, mixed political system, was the Roman Senate. The Roman Senate was the representatives of the rich families of Rome. So each family might send a few representatives within the Senate, and that's how the Senate ran. And what the Senate did was it set policy. Like modern Senates, it made policies for the council or for the consul. The consul is kind of the head of the Roman Empire, so kind of the president in current terms. Kind of the president.
Excuse me, sorry to interrupt, but why is there is that a killing like a killing people thing like over here, like a hang, like somebody hangs on it and then maybe making a judge?
No, that is just a bowl to hold water or maybe even a fire.
Oh.
All right, so we talked about sure.
So what does Senate mean?
Right. So Senate just means a group of people that are responsible of making laws. So a Senate. So that is what the Roman Senate is. It's a group of representatives or people from rich families from all over Rome that make policies or set policies for the consul. In this case, and the consul is kind of like the head of the Roman Empire and kind of the president. But they're not a dictator because they don't have complete say over what the Roman Empire does because the Roman Senate can vote on it. So this is kind of the part that looks like an aristocracy, but but it's also kind of a democracy, right? Because you have the voting and the representation of people, and we said that democracy is kind of categorized by representation. If there's representation, it's kind of a democracy. That's why the Roman political system is kind of a mix. It has this point where democracy, people vote, and people are represented in the Senate, but it's also aristocracy because we said that only rich people can join the Roman Senate. But that's kind of really interesting until you see how those two mix. On the next slide, we're going to talk about how dictatorship kind of, or the monarchy and dictatorship kind of leads into this. So let me give you two terms to remember. The terms are patricians and also the plebeians. So the rich families are called the patricians. So they were rich. And the plebeians were kind of everybody else. So those who are kind of the lower class uh, and kind of the common folks. And really fun fact, if those who play video games, the very common term pleb, calling somebody like bad at video games, usually it comes from the term plebeian from the Roman Empire, which stands for just common folks. All right, let's keep going. So we talked about the aristocracy and the democracy part of the Roman system. Let's talk about the more dictatorship and more monarchy part of it. So each year, the Senate will choose two consuls of Rome. So again, this is still kind of the democracy type, right? Because there's checks and balances, and there's two consuls of Rome because of the checks and balances. The two consuls kind of check each other to make sure both check each other to make sure both of them are in line. So nobody is really corrupt or they are trying to pursue agenda that's not good for Rome. So make sure that Rome is in line and nobody gets too powerful. And the other use for two consuls, so two leaders, is that one can kind of manage the outside problems. So usually leading a war, starting a war, or having diplomatic relationships. The other consul would usually stay home and manage more of the more domestic problems. Another checks and balances that got placed within Rome is the 1-year term. So a consul can only rule for 1 term, and after that, you have to wait 10 years to be re-elected or to be able to be re-elected again. So that kind of follows, uh, the more modern way of having a government. Uh, the president is elected in, and there's usually like the Romans, we have two heads of two kind of leaders. We have a vice president and a president if you're in the US. And here we have a prime minister. So that's kind of different. So the US system is more closely based on the Roman system. And yeah, you see that they have this 1-year term in Rome. And we know nowadays our terms for the president or prime minister is a 4-year term. So that's kind of modeled after this really old societal system. And again, Does anybody know the maximum amount of terms a president or a prime minister can rule for? Lyndon?
2.
Yes, that's correct. So, uh, in current society, presidents or heads of state can lead for 2 terms. So, in total of, if it's a 4-year term, they can lead for a total of 8 years. That's kind of a check and balance. So, one leader can lead for too long. That's the same thing as what the Romans did. They made sure that consuls usually can only rule for around 1 year term, and they have to wait 10 years before getting their turn again to be elected. So that's kind of the more democratic and more aristocratic points of Rome. Let's talk about dictatorship and how kind of the king and queen talk kind of come in. The Romans had a really special rule. It's a rule that can be declared within a crisis and when there is a war going on. And so what this rule does is that whenever Rome has a war or when there's a crisis in Rome, the Romans would appoint a dictator. They will appoint one person that takes absolute control over the country for that period of war. Because we know that democracy doesn't really work quickly because there's a lot of checks and balances, which means there's a lot of voting, there's a lot of confirmation, which makes decisions really slow. So in really hard times and in crises, sorry, a dictator would take over Rome. This kind of uh, this kind of thought that a dictator or a single ruler and leader should take over in a moment of crisis is from a story of Cincinnatus. So the story of Cincinnatus goes like this. There is this old retired Roman general called Cincinnatus. So because he retired, he now lives in the countryside on his own farm, plantation, and was living really happily and really comfortably. However, one day the Romans get attacked and a war breaks out. And the Romans are in a crisis because nobody knows what to do within a war situation because Romans are relatively peaceful. This sent the Romans into kind of a panic. And Cincinnatus kind of saw this happening. So what he did was he took up his spear again and kind of took control of Rome and led the Romans into victory. So Cincinnatus was appointed the head of the state for the duration of the war, kind of becoming the sole leadership. And after he defeated the enemies, he gave up his power and returned to his really peaceful life of his retirement. So that kind of story of Cincinnatus taking up power and giving it away freely, kind of is the reason why the Romans have this rule where a dictator can take over the country in a moment of crisis. And again, we can see a lot of similarities between the Roman political system and our current political system, with a lot of the rules, such as having a two consul system, so a vice president system, a term system where people can only be a leader and rule for a certain period of time, and also the story of Cincinnatus with the rule of crisis also apply to modern day. And this is the reason for the modern system really building off the Roman system was because the influences the Roman systems have on George Washington. As most of you guys know, or I hope hopefully everybody knows, George Washington is the first president of the United States, and he was really influenced and heavily influenced by the model of leadership of Rome. So because of that, he started this trend of having everything based off the Roman system, which led to a very sound and very structural system because we know that the Roman system worked thanks to history. So that's why we kind of copied that system. All right, any questions there? I know there's a lot of information to process there, so you guys are free to ask any questions you want. Nope, is everything clear? Yep. All right, perfect. All right, that was kind of the boring part out of the way, so let's get to the more interesting parts now. I was talking about the most famous person in the Roman history, and that is Julius Caesar. So Julius Caesar's full name is Gaius Julius Caesar. He was born in the 100th BC or BCE into a really wealthy and leading family of Rome. So usually wealthy families were part of a leading family. So families that usually have leaders or led the country. And why there's this byline or secondary title of his miraculous birth was kind of the situation. So documented within history, Julius Caesar's birth was really a miracle because at that time people thought his birth was impossible and he was for sure not going to make it because it wasn't a favorable condition in his birth. So his birth required a surgical procedure that was really difficult at the time, but it's something pretty common right now that we call a C-section. So a cesarean section is kind of a method of birth. And because Julius Caesar is kind of the first person to be documented using that medical procedure, that now common medical procedure is now named after Julius Caesar because cesarean section, C-section, named after Julius Caesar. So even though the Caesar salad is not named after Julius Caesar, something else is. All right. So because Julius Caesar was born into this really rich and wealthy and powerful family, he joined the Senate, so a group of representatives, and also the Roman army. And he really quickly rose to power because he was a very good leader, and he became a really, really powerful general. And because of his really, really powerful leadership, he thought, well, let me run to become the next consul. So in 49 BC, Julius Caesar won the election of consul. Which means that he became the next consul within the year 50 BC of Rome. Julius Caesar won this election through the help of two people. The first person was Crassus, which was the richest man in Rome. So he had the help and the support of the richest man in Rome. Crassus made his money actually kind of in a really interesting way. He made his money through fighting fires. Basically, his whole model was, "Oh, your house is on fire? Give me money before I put it out," because the Rome didn't really have a lot of fire infrastructure or any fire support system. So what Crassus did was usually before he put out a fire, he would ask for money or usually ask for the people whose houses were on fire for that house for a really cheap price. And if people didn't agree to pay him or didn't want to give them their house, he would just let the house burn. Just kind of a sad way of seeing and a really evil way of seeing how Crassus made his money. Julius Caesar, the second person Julius Caesar had help from was Pompey the Great. So Pompey the Great was one of the greatest Roman generals at the time, which was kind of the rival of Alexander the Great, another really, really great general. But as we know down the line, something really bad happens. So what happened to this alliance and this dictatorship? All right. So we just saw a really small clip of how the election of the election of Julius Caesar and how that was kind of only good for Caesar because he kind of uh, killed everybody else and defeated everybody else. Well, so that clip kind of made Julius Caesar seem like a really really great guy. Even though he was a dictator, he made sure that Rome was really prosperous and everybody got a lot of wealth and was really happy and well off. However, in one person's life, when there's ups, there must be down. So unfortunately, even though he made a really good emperor and he created a really really strong Rome and made Rome and expanded Rome from the stretches of Britain all the way into the Middle East, Mesopotamia. But not everybody liked him because of his continuous dictatorship. So his continuous power, because he didn't want to just let go after 1 year as consul, because after his return he banished that consul. There's no more consul. He was the sole dictator. Because of this, many senators thought that Caesar controlled too much power. So what really happened is that because of this, the Senate assassinated Julius Caesar on the floor of the Roman Senate. So when the Roman Senate was in session, so when everybody's at the Senate, a group of people called the conspirators went up to Julius Caesar and stabbed him 23 times. That's a lot of stabbings for one person's death. The reason why the senators killed Julius Caesar was they thought that by killing Caesar, they were able to revive the Roman Republic. Because the Roman Republic was kind of, in a way, dying because of Julius Caesar's dictatorship. No longer was Rome this prosperous land where everybody had a say. It was still prosperous, but unfortunately, it's under the rule of one person. So that's why the Senate, which was powerless after Julius got dictatorship.
Wait. I'm sorry to interrupt, but are they killing the empire?
Yes, they killed the emperor.
No.
That is what I was talking.
The empire is gonna
they didn't kill the empire, but they killed the emperor. So the dictator. They stabbed Julius Caesar 23 times in the front and in the back.
23 times. That's not enough. I think 1 million is enough for that.
But usually 23 times is a lot already. Seeing that like one stab can kill a person.
I wanted they slice them into sushis.
Well, to be honest, not everybody hated Julius Caesar back then. Most people, the common folks or the plebeians, really liked Caesar because they made the country really accessible for more. Because there's only one dictator, there's no longer the aristocracy and the plebeians. They were just kind of everybody and Julius Caesar, which made it really.
But what did he do? What's the baddest thing he ever done, like to them? And then why did they want to kill him?
They wanted to kill him because not so that he did anything bad, but because they didn't want a dictator. We learned that the Roman Empire was always a kind of a mix of democracy, monarchy, and aristocracy. However, when Julius Caesar took control of the empire, he made it a complete monarchy. And the Senate, or the wealthy people, didn't like that. They wanted to have some power. So because Julius Caesar basically took away their power, some senates didn't like that. And they wanted to restore, in their words, they wanted to restore Rome to its former glory. However, the opposite kind of happened. Why I call it the fall of Caesar and the empire. The killing of Caesar really didn't solve anything. The death of Caesar only led to what is called a power vacuum, where there is this, where you.
Teacher, but why is the fire? Why is the fire over here?
This is just pictures. you don't have to take it too seriously. It's just a depiction of a fire getting knocked over because it's a crowd of riot where people wanted to stab Caesar. All right. Let's get back.
When the fire gets bigger, and then people are gonna leave him on a chain, and then he's gonna die in the fire.
No, he got stabbed 23 times, and that's it. That fire is just part of a painting. This is a painting, and it's not real life.
Just for fun.
Not for fun. It's a painting to make the painting look better.
Oh, okay. It's chill. I got chill now.
All right. So let's get back. I was talking about how killing Caesar kind of created this power vacuum. What is a power vacuum? Well, a power vacuum is when there is this kind of group of, there's this king or queen that gets killed and there's nobody in charge. This just makes everything into chaos. People try to grab power, other people trying to be king, and well, this kind of marks the fall of the Roman Empire. It was no longer the greatest empire in the world because of the murder of Caesar.
Wait. So they kill him and get the crown, and whoever gets the crown gets to be king. And what if they don't empire is very good?
So there's no crown. It's whoever has the power. So the will of the people. So whoever the people like the most became the next emperor. But then it never happened because of a lot of complicated reasons. So those who are interested on what happened after Caesar's death, I urge you to find some YouTube videos to watch, more on the aftermaths of Julius' death and how it led to the downfall of the Roman Empire. All right. Before we end off, does anybody have any questions? All right. So that is the end of today's lesson.
Bye-bye.
If you guys don't have any questions, you guys are free to go, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye, guys.